He is the great Rick Neuheisel, and he's back with us on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn. It's always great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Glenn, it's a pleasure, and in particular because we get to talk about America's game.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I've been doing this for a long time now, and it is my favorite game every year.
I know that's true.
And you know, it's not the best football players that I'll have seen all year. It may not be the most competitive game, although the last 2 years would say otherwise. But the bottom line is all that goes into this game and the feeling that you get when you watch the pomp and circumstance that begins this celebration of football and celebration of academies and the commitment these kids make is so overwhelmingly red, white, and blue. I just wish every American could get a dose of it, because I think we'd solve a lot of problems if everybody came in with the same attitude that you would have the day after watching these kids fight, scratch, and claw.
Coach, we've rubbed elbows a couple times at Army-Navy games, and I talk a lot about, like, I almost get embarrassed by it because I talk about, like, the first time I ever went and sitting there in Philadelphia and taking in the scene and genuinely being moved to tears by it, right? Like, and I'm like, God, what is wrong with me? But it's what this game does to you, and having it all hit you in the moment, and how powerful this is, and how grateful you are for these young men. It really is unlike anything in sport.
I sit there and they play the national anthem, and a couple of years ago, I think we were in New York at the Meadowlands, and Lee Greenwood's out there, and I'm proud to be an American. And you just are overwhelmed with this sense of patriotism, and we're like, these kids, some 18 years old, are making this decision that they're going to commit their lives in at least 5 years after their graduation to defending all that we take for granted. And it's like, okay, this is awesome. And then when the flyover happens, you look up there and you see the, millions, close to billions of dollars in what we have to defend our freedoms. You're going, we're on the right team here. Now let's get organized and let's get ourselves all back on the same page, because we got a great thing going here in this land of plenty.
Coach, it's funny because you say they're not always the best football players, but yet ironically, right, this is one of the years where they're both really good football teams, Army and Navy. I guess the line when I was looking at it yesterday was sitting at 6.5, and I'm like, this is an Army-Navy game. Like, it's going to come down to the final possession, isn't it? Like, that's just the way this works, and particularly with both these teams being this good this season, I know Army's probably been a little bit better, but I would still expect this to be exactly what it's been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, you take 6.5 points, and you start with that on the scoreboard, you feel like you're got house money. There's no question about it. The two teams are terrific. Let's talk a little football. Bryson Daly, the quarterback for Army, if he has 23 yards passing, which of course he will, he'll be the only third quarterback in Army history to have run for 900 and thrown for 900 in the same season. And he did it last year. He's one of the two that have done it before, so he's the first of a kind. He's got over 1,400 yards rushing. They're number one in the country in time of possession, so they can play keep away. And their defense is a top 10 defense. So if you like complementary football where offense and defense play together, you've come to the right place. And how about this? Army won the first conference championship ever by either of these two teams, by beating Tulane last week and getting their American Conference title in year one of their membership. And in that game, they didn't punt. They didn't have a penalty. They didn't have a turnover, and they didn't have an incomplete pass. That I don't think I've ever seen before.
That's decent. That's not bad. It's efficient if you can do it. Rick Neuheisel with us here on GCR. Coach, with that said, right, like I know that a lot of people will look at that. We'll look at the two results against Tulane in particular and use that as a way to show, hey, this is how we know Army is definitively better. We also know that, Navy went through a quarterback injury late in the season, and earlier on in the year, they were looking like kind of a machine themselves up until the Notre Dame game. Like, I get the numbers probably are a bit better for Army, but like, we saw what Navy did to Memphis earlier this year. That was only close because of, an onside kick at the end of the game that kind of changed things. I still think that this is a Navy team that, with Blake Horvath on the field on Saturday, is pretty competitive with Army.
No question about it. First of all, the coaches know each other backwards and forwards. The new head coach at Navy, now this is his second year, Brian Newberry, was a guy from Kennesaw State. And at Kennesaw State, when he was there being the defensive coordinator, Cody Worley, the offensive coordinator for Army, was the quarterback coach there. So they know each other back and forth. Kenny Niumatalolo, the former Navy coach, who Brian Newberry came and became the defensive coordinator for, was a Paul Johnson disciple, which is where Jeff Monken cut his teeth. So this is we know everything about the other team type of thing. The newcomer to this is the new offensive coordinator to Navy, with a guy by the name of Drew Cronick, who came from Mercer, where they ran a lot of elements of wing T football. Now, he knew he had to do some different things, so now with Blake Horvath, they call it the swing T. So this is going to be really fun. And Blake Horvath, if he's healthy, and by all accounts, he's going to be ready to go, this makes for a much bigger challenge than it would have otherwise been for the Black Knight defense.
100%, and that's the story, that he's ready to go. And look, you mentioned Bryson Daly and throwing the ball, but like Blake Horvath has thrown the ball in a way that, it's almost effort. Like, it kind of blows my mind. Every time I watch him play, I say, how is he at Navy? Like, how he looks like he could play anywhere.
Yeah, no, he's a good player. When you listen, they don't throw often. These teams have to be built another way because of their size restrictions. They're not going to be as big as some of the teams that they play, so they have to play, option football at times. But when you look at how they're put together, you got to be really proud of how they go about it. And both these quarterbacks, I mean, you may not see yards in the leaders, but when you look at yards per attempt, I think Daly is 11.2 and Horvath is 9.8, which would put him in the top 5 in the country. So against other starting quarterbacks. So really, really efficient teams.
Coach, can you speak to, it's funny because you brought up Kenny Niumatalolo, and one of my favorite people in all of sports. And
one of the great guys in all the world.
Yep. Best. And we were talking to him earlier this week, and he talked about, like, as much as he loves this game, that it is. There's a burden that comes along with being a head coach in this game and knowing that you're defined by it. And frankly, it's the reason why he's not the Navy coach anymore, despite the fact that he owned this series for a long time. Can you speak to, like, as much as we all celebrate this game, the significance? Brian Newberry's only in his second season. He's got to be feeling the heat about this, despite all of the success that he had here this year at Navy.
Well, that pressure goes all the way up the ladder, right? I think, is it Chet Gladchuk?
Yes.
Is the athletic director there at Navy. He fired Kenny Niumatalolo after the game.
Yep.
And Kenny, trying to, bring some calm to the situation, said, Chet, let's wait. Let's just relax. Now, ultimately, it led to a change, but that's how emotional this game is and how important the game is. My first Army-Navy experience was back when I was out of coaching, and I had the time. So my wife and I went with my sister and her husband. We all came to Philadelphia to take the game in, and we just happened to stay at the same hotel where the Army personnel were, and they were all staying. And after a couple of drinks, you can imagine the loose lips out there, and they got it. This is before Jeff Monken got there, and it was a 14-game losing streak, and they were going, this can't go on anymore. And I just kept hearing it, and I'm going, wow, this is really emotional. This isn't just a reunion. This is a battle deluxe, and the stakes are high. And when you get out there and you get lucky enough to be down on the sideline before the festivities begin, and you see all the dignitaries, meaning these military leaders, this is no picnic. This is no celebration. This is warfare for 60 minutes in shoulder pads, and then we'll get on back to the same team. But this is serious stuff, so the stakes are high.
All right, Coach. Well, since I have you, I got to run a couple of these by you real quick. Is Bill Belichick the North Carolina as seismic for the sport as everyone is trying to make it out to be, or is it a coach taking a job that just happens to be a little bit more famous than your average coach that joins the ACC?
I think both can be true.
Okay.
I mean, and we'll wait and see if it's seismic. I don't know that we can make that determination yet. Jimmy Johnson, the old Cowboy coach, Dolphin coach, who coached at Miami and Oklahoma State before that, said college football and NFL have one thing in common. That's the shape of the ball. So I know we've moved to a more transactional game in college, but it still remains to be seen whether Bill Belichick will resonate with college guys. I know Deion's had an amazing impact at Colorado, but there's going to be a lot of work that goes in whether or not he's going to be able to fit the bill as a recruiter, and especially when people can leave if they've been given tough love. I don't know that is a fit. Now we'll wait and see. And then the other component is North Carolina is part of the ACC. And the ACC, for all its virtues, doesn't have the same money, meaning the same war chest that the SEC or the Big Ten have. So if he's going to the gunfight with a knife, meaning in terms of NIL resources, then I don't care who you are, you're not going to be as successful as otherwise you could have been.
Oregon comes into the playoff as the only undefeated, the best team in the country. Is there separation, though, or is this still, very much almost anyone's to win?
Well, for all their hard work and being the only undefeated team, they get the winner of the Tennessee-Ohio State game.
That's tough.
I mean, the seeding of this is preposterous. We understand why they did it. It was a concession to the other power conferences, notably the ACC and the Big 12. And at the time they made the deal, it was also the Pac-12. But the way it's worked out, we're not being fair to the one seed. Right now, the 6th seed, if Penn State, who lost to Oregon, beats SMU in a home game, they're going to get to play Boise State. And that, to me, when you compare that to playing Ohio State, is a completely different deal.
Yep.
And yet that's the way the field is laid out. So I think there's going to be some major tweaks to it. Oregon clearly is the best team because they played the best. And the guy that I would pick first if we had a college football draft and I was picking another college football team would be Dillon Gabriel. He just makes so few mistakes. He's a coach's dream at quarterback.
Do you think it's going to be 16 here before too long for the playoff?
Here is the old wise guy said, the answer's money. Now, what was the question?
Yeah.
The answer, of course, is yes.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Is Travis Hunter the correct answer, by the way, for Saturday night? Like, is that? I feel like it's sort of kind of coalesced around it being the answer.
Let me say it this way. I have no qualms with Travis Hunter winning a Heisman Trophy. He's a sensational player. But it isn't such a unicorn thing to be able to go out there and cover and then play on the other side of the ball when you're as gifted athlete. I guarantee you there's a number of wide receivers in college football right now who could go be great corners. They just didn't come into a situation where the head coach basically promised you that to get you to come to Jackson State and tell you that he's going to make you this unicorn because it hasn't been done. If we put a GPS on him and then measured how many miles he ran during the game because of the 130 plays and then measured an NBA player, it'd be very comparable as to how many they ran. It's just we haven't seen it before, so we're making it. But here's my final point. And this is why I would either go Dillon Gabriel, which I just told you would be my first choice, or I'd go Ashton Jeanty. This is supposed to be about being the MVP of your team and the most excellent college football player. If you're talking MVP, Shedeur Sanders is the MVP of the Colorado Buffaloes. Shedeur Sanders made this guy the great receiver. Not that he's not unbelievably gifted and he's going to be the second or third guy taken in the draft. But you know who's going to be first? Shedeur. And so with that being said, let's look at Ashton Jeanty because this also has a character piece to it too. Ashton Genty was a guy given one scholarship offer. He goes to Boise and runs for 1,400 yards last year. He is offered by every school in the country to come and be a part of their program, and lucrative offers all over the place from all the power schools. He says, I'm staying where they recruited me, and he takes Boise State to the number 3 seed in the college football playoff, and with nearly 2,500 yards. I mean, you saw Cam Scadaboo, the kid for Arizona State, who's also could have been in New York. That kid has 930 yards less than Ashton Genty. 930. That's like a season. That is an incredible undertaking. So while I think Hunter's going to win, I think we missed on it.
Coach, great stuff as always. I can't wait for this time next year where you're here back in Baltimore for the Army-Navy game. We will.
I can't wait either. I was in Baltimore for Thanksgiving this year. I came down with my good friends, the Hodge Mahalases, who live out there at Hunt Valley.
Okay.
And it was fun to be back in town and hanging out in the Queen City. Awesome deal, man.
Well, we look forward to having you back here next year. We'll look forward right now to CBS and CBS Sports Network's coverage of Army-Navy, America's game this Saturday. Coach Rick Neuheisel, you're the best, my friend. Thank you for taking the time.
See you, buddy. Bye-bye.